The floors of the Willow Co market in downtown Boston always gleamed, reflecting the artfully arranged displays and the affluent customers who browsed them. The air was a symphony of prosperity, fragrant with freshly ground coffee and baked bread. In the middle of this perfect scene stood Evelyn Hart, 49, behind the customer service counter. Her salt and pepper hair was tied in a neat bun, and her eyes, though weary, were gentle. An elderly woman, her hands trembling as she clutched her shopping cart, was explaining that she'd lost her receipt. She needed it for an insurance reimbursement. "It's all right, dear," Evelyn said softly, her voice a warm, low note. "Do you remember about what time you checked out? We can find it." As Evelyn carefully searched the system, the store manager Tracy Caldwell strutted over. The sharp clicks of her heels on the polished floor announced her arrival before she even spoke. Her face was soured, as if she'd just tasted a lemon. "Evelyn, what are you doing?" Tracy demanded, her voice sharp. "We have a line." "I'm just helping this lady reprint her receipt." "Tracy," Evelyn replied, her eyes still on the screen. "Reprint a receipt because she lost it." Tracy let out a short, mocking laugh, loud enough for nearby shoppers to turn their heads. "Listen, Evelyn, your time is company money. We don't have time to search for scraps of paper for people who can't keep track of their own things. This isn't a charity." The words landed like a slap. A hush fell over the checkout area. The elderly woman shrank, her face flushing with shame. Evelyn's cheeks burned, but she didn't say a word. She quietly hit the print button and handed the slip of paper to the old woman with a strained smile. "Here you go," she whispered. Not far away, a new employee was quietly stocking shelves. His name was Ben Porter, an unassuming young man who seemed to blend into the background. He said nothing. He didn't intervene, but he saw it all. His eyes recorded everything: the cruelty in Tracy's voice, the shame on the old woman's face, and most of all, the quiet, dignified humiliation on Evelyn's. He adjusted his baseball cap and went back to his work, but somewhere in his mind, a gear had just started to turn. Dawn in Boston often arrived with a cold mist, even in the summer. Every morning, Evelyn Hart pedaled her old bicycle through the lavish streets of the Back Bay, gliding past designer boutiques and elegant brownstone homes with their perfectly scrubbed steps. This world, the world of the customers she served, was a universe away from her own. Her bike was a quiet reminder of that distance, practical, durable, and unpretentious, just like its owner. When she arrived at Willow Co, she headed straight for the basement break room. It was a cramped, windowless space that always smelled of stale coffee, microwaved meals, and bleach. She placed her lunchbox, always a simple, homemade sandwich, an apple, and a thermos of hot tea, in the staff refrigerator. At lunchtime, while the younger employees huddled together, laughing loudly about last night's parties and trending TikTok videos, Evelyn sat alone in a corner. She ate slowly, her gaze distant. Today, a new kid, barely out of his teens, sat across from her, having forgotten his lunch. He looked awkward and hungry. Evelyn didn't ask any questions. She simply pushed half of her sandwich across the table toward him. The boy looked up surprised and mumbled a "thank you." Evelyn just gave a small nod. To most of the staff, Evelyn was nearly invisible. She was part of the furniture, a silent fixture at the customer service desk. They didn't ask about her family or invite her for drinks after work. They passed her in the hall without a greeting. She was just Evelyn, the older lady at the counter. But that invisibility never made her bitter. She was still the first person to pick up a dropped item, the only one who remembered the janitor's name, and the one who always left a little hot tea in the pot for the next shift. She lived in the shadows, yet she gave off a quiet warmth that no one bothered to notice. The conflict didn't end with the receipt. A few days later, Evelyn was called into Tracy's office. Its glass wall turned the meeting into a public display. "Evelyn," Tracy began, shuffling a stack of papers, "I see you authorized an exchange for a customer without a receipt based only on their credit card history. You know that's against protocol." "But he's a regular," Evelyn explained gently. "He shops here every week. The system confirmed the purchase. I didn't want to make it difficult for him." "Protocol is protocol." Tracy snapped her voice like ice. "We don't pay you to not make it difficult for customers. We pay you to follow the rules. This is your formal written warning." Evelyn just nodded, accepting the slip of paper without argument. She returned to her station, her face an unreadable mask. Meanwhile, in another aisle, two young employees were leaning against a shelf, scrolling through their phones and giggling. A customer was struggling nearby, looking for help, but they completely ignored her. Tracy walked by, saw them, and instead of a reprimand, she smiled. "Great work, you two," she said. "Keep that positive energy up." Ben, pretending to wipe down a nearby shelf, witnessed both incidents. He discreetly pulled out his phone. He wasn't filming, just tapping a quick note into a memo app. The entry was simple: Evelyn written up for helping a regular. Others praised for being on their phones. It was a clear, sickening injustice. He looked over at Evelyn, who was meticulously straightening her counter, her face impossibly calm. She didn't complain to anyone. She just quietly worked. Ben started asking himself bigger questions. Was this an isolated incident, or was this a systemic problem at Willow Co? He felt a growing need to find out. It was a punch to her dignity, a direct assault on her integrity. That Friday evening, checking her emailed pay stub in her small apartment, Evelyn felt her heart sink. She always kept a meticulous log of her hours in a small notebook. The numbers didn't match. Her paycheck was short by 2 hours on Tuesday and another hour and a half on Thursday. Nearly $40 had vanished. To some, it was nothing. To Evelyn, it was the week's electricity bill. She knew she hadn't left early. She was always one of the last to go, making sure her station was perfect for the morning shift. Someone had deliberately altered her timesheet. On Monday morning, with quiet resolve, Evelyn approached Tracy's office, holding her notebook and the printed pay stub. "Excuse me, Tracy," she began. "I think there might be a mistake on my paycheck. I was docked for hours that I worked." Tracy didn't even glance at the papers. She sighed dramatically, leaning back in her chair with an air of profound boredom. "Evelyn, honestly," she said, her voice dripping with contempt, "you think I have time for your little complaints?" She waved a dismissive hand. "The system tracked your hours. If there's a problem, you probably clocked out wrong. Now, if you don't mind, I have actual work to do." The raw disdain in her voice hurt more than the missing money. Evelyn stood frozen for a moment, the blood draining from her face. All she could manage was a whispered, "Okay," before turning away, the wound visible in her eyes. Ben was at a nearby register, pretending to fix the receipt paper roll. He had heard every word. He watched Evelyn's small, defeated figure walk away. This time his eyes were no longer calm. A hot, quiet fury rose in his chest. This wasn't just unfairness. This was theft. This was a cruel abuse of power. His hands tightened into fists inside his jacket pockets. His patience had just run out. The tension snapped. The final straw came in the form of a fabricated customer complaint. Tracy called Evelyn into her office again, a triumphant look on her face. "We received a complaint," she said, her tone falsely solemn. "A customer said an older employee at the service desk was dismissive and impatient. The description only fits you." Evelyn was stunned. "That's impossible," she said, her voice trembling. I try my best with every single customer. Well, someone disagrees, Tracy shrugged. Given your previous warnings for not following protocol, I have no choice but to dock your pay this week. Consider this your final warning, Evelyn. A wave of helplessness washed over her. She knew she was being set up, but what could she do? It was her word against a manager's. The rumor mill churned in the break room. Ben overheard two younger cashiers whispering. Heard Tracy's trying to get rid of Evelyn, one said. She's been here too long, makes too much. They said it's cheaper to fire her and hire two part-time college kids. That was it. The observation was over. It was time to act. That night, Ben didn't go home right away. He sat in his car and made a few phone calls. It starts tomorrow, he said firmly into his phone. Get everything ready. I want it all on record. The next day, Ben Porter, the new guy, arrived with a subtle upgrade. He wore a micro camera disguised as a button on his shirt. A high-quality audio recorder was tucked in his pocket. He was no longer a passive observer. He was an evidence collector. He recorded everything: the contemptuous looks Tracy gave Evelyn, the snide remarks from other co-workers, the times Evelyn quietly bent down to pick up trash someone else had left. But more importantly, he also captured the good Evelyn patiently giving directions to a lost tourist. Evelyn smiling and handing a cracker to a crying toddler. Evelyn helping a young co-worker restack a fallen display. He was building a case, a visual and auditory record of kindness punished and laziness rewarded. The game was about to change. On Friday morning, an email hit every Boston store employee's inbox. Mandatory all-staff meeting, 10 a.m. in the main stockroom. A current of confusion and annoyance ran through the staff. Tracy Caldwell marched into the stockroom, looking irritated, assuming this was another waste of time from corporate. Evelyn stood in the very back, silent, as always, a knot of dread in her stomach. She was sure this was it, the moment she would be publicly fired. When everyone had gathered, the door opened. Ben Porter walked in. But something was different. He wasn't wearing his Willow Co. uniform. He wore a simple but expensive-looking shirt and well-tailored pants. He didn't head to the back with the other employees. He walked straight to the front where Tracy stood. "Thank you all for coming," he said. His voice wasn't the tentative one of a new hire. It was clear, resonant, and full of authority. "Most of you know me as Ben. That's not my full name." He paused, looking directly into Tracy's stunned eyes. "My name is Benjamin Langston, and I am the founder and CEO of Willow Co." A stunned silence fell over the room. Tracy's jaw dropped. The other employees exchanged wide-eyed, disbelieving glances. "For the past week," Benjamin continued, "I've been working here as one of you. Not to spy, but to rediscover the soul of this company, to find the people who truly live the values we were built on." He gestured, and a large projection screen was lowered. He clicked a button on a remote. A video began to play. First, the clip of Tracy scolding Evelyn, "This isn't a charity." Then the lazy employees on their phones, followed by Tracy's praise. Then the audio of Tracy dismissing Evelyn's pay complaint. The video then shifted to a montage. Evelyn patiently helped the old woman with her receipt. Evelyn is sharing her lunch. Evelyn smiled at a child. Evelyn quietly cleaned up a mess someone else had made. It ended with a close-up of her kind, tired, but fundamentally decent face. Benjamin turned off the screen and faced the silent, shocked crowd. He looked straight at Evelyn, who was frozen in the back of the room. His voice grew softer, filled with emotion. "She's the kind of person this company was built for, and we forgot that." He turned his gaze, now sharp as a razor, to Tracy. "We forgot that our value isn't in blind protocol, but in human kindness, not in ruthless efficiency, but in dignity. As of today, that changes. A few days after the fateful meeting, Evelyn received a call from Benjamin Langston's office, summoning her to the corporate headquarters overlooking the Boston Harbor. She walked into the vast CEO's office, feeling small and out of place. Benjamin wasn't sitting behind his massive desk. He stood to greet her, offered her a seat in a comfortable armchair, and poured her a cup of tea himself. "Evelyn," he began respectfully, "I want to apologize for what you endured and for my company allowing it to happen." Then he made her an offer she couldn't comprehend. "We're opening a new flagship location in the Seaport, a store that will be the model for all other Willow Co locations in service atmosphere and values. I can think of no one better to run it. I would like to offer you the position of store manager." Evelyn was speechless. I'm just a customer service clerk," she stammered. "I don't know anything about managing." "You know everything that matters," Benjamin replied with a smile. "You know how to treat people with respect and kindness. The rest, we can teach you." A month later, Evelyn Hart walked into her new store. It was unlike any Willow Co she had ever seen. The space was airy and filled with natural light. There was a small coffee bar in the corner, and the staff wore new, comfortable uniforms. The atmosphere buzzed with positivity. During the first week, a young cashier named Leo was fumbling with the new register, getting flustered as his line grew longer. Instead of scolding him, Evelyn quietly walked up beside him. She said nothing. She simply placed her hand over his, gently guiding his fingers to the right keys. She did it with a wordless patience that transferred calm instead of fear. Leo took a deep breath and finished the transaction smoothly. "It's okay," she said, patting his shoulder after the customer had left. "We all need time to learn." Behind the central checkout counter, a small, elegantly framed sign was hung. It wasn't a corporate rule, it was a declaration. It read, in simple script, "Kindness is not weakness. It's our foundation." Becoming a manager didn't change who Evelyn Hart was. She had an office, but she was rarely in it. She was usually out on the floor, helping a customer find a rare spice or pushing a stray cart back into place. She didn't lead by giving orders, she led by example. She still brought her thermos of hot tea every day. Now, however, she poured extra cups during breaks, sharing them with new employees who looked tired or homesick. She asked about their day, listened to their stories, and made them feel seen. She knew everyone's name, from the night stalker to the part-timer in the produce section. To them, she wasn't the boss. She was Evelyn. One afternoon, an elderly gentleman, the same one who had witnessed her public shaming at the old store, sought her out. He took her hand. "Ma'am," he said, "I just wanted to say this store feels different. It feels warm. Thank you. Not just for the service, but for how you make people feel." Evelyn's eyes welled up. It was the highest praise she could ever receive. From a distance, standing near the entrance, Benjamin Langston watched. He was dressed in a casual jacket, just another shopper. He had visited unannounced, just to see how things were. He saw Evelyn talking with the customer, a genuine smile on her face. He saw her staff working with a pride and cheerfulness he had never seen before. He didn't need to intervene. His work here was done. He smiled to himself, a look of deep satisfaction and relief, and quietly slipped out. Evelyn wasn't the kind of leader business schools write about. She didn't give rousing speeches or devise complex strategies. Her power was in her quietness, in her small acts of grace, in her ability to see the human being behind the job title. She was the leader no one saw coming, who proved a simple, profound truth. Sometimes the strongest voices are the ones we almost miss. Evelyn Hart's story is more than a modern fairy tale where the good guy wins. It's a powerful reminder that the true worth of a person and of an organization is rarely found on a spreadsheet or in a rigid rulebook. It's found in quiet decency, in integrity when no one is watching, and in the courage to treat others with dignity. What's the key takeaway? Leadership isn't a title, it's an action. And kindness isn't weakness, it's the strongest foundation of all. In our busy lives, how many Evelyns have we unknowingly walked past? How many acts of grace have we taken for granted? This story invites us all to slow down, to look closer, and champion the quiet heroes in our own lives. If you believe in the power of stories to change perspectives and inspire a better world, subscribe to Toch Story today. Don't miss a single emotional journey, because the most meaningful stories often begin in the simplest of moments.